Good morning, friends. Happy Monday. I'm happy about Monday. Promise. Today is my first day back from work, from vacation, and I could totally have an attitude of, I have to go back to work. I don't want to go back to work. Hey, Bonnie. I could totally have an attitude of, I don't want to go back to work. This sucks. I hate this. I don't want to work. Blah, blah, blah. And there's a little piece of me that feels that way, a little piece. But I remind myself that the Lord has blessed me with an amazing job as a clinical application analyst. I have a very good job with coworkers that I love, with a lead that I love, with a boss that I adore, who's one of my bestest friends. And I am blessed to be able to wake up this morning on Monday morning, stay in my hoodie and leggings, and walk 5 feet from my kitchen into my office and spend the day there doing a job that I love. So that's the attitude I have to have on the first day back from vacation, because let's face it, I'd rather do other things full time. And I won't say what in case my boss is watching. Yeah, right. Like she watches me. I knew better. All right. Good morning. It's time for devotions. It's January 3rd. We're going to talk about the flood today. So, all right. I'll go ahead and shut my face and get started. Because I know you tuned in for the word, not my face. All right. The flood covers the earth. Genesis 7, 1 through 24. When everything was ready, the Lord said to Noah, "Go into the boat with all your family, for among all the people of the earth, I can see that you alone are righteous. Take with you 7 pairs, male and female, of each animal I have approved for eating and for sacrifice, and take 1 pair of each of the others. Also take 7 pairs of every kind of bird. There must be a male and female in each pair to ensure that all life will survive on the earth after the flood. 7 days from now I will make rains pour down on the earth, and it will rain for 40 days and 40 nights until I have wiped from the earth all the living things I have created." So Noah did everything as the Lord commanded. Noah was 600 years old when the flood covered the earth. He went on board the boat to escape the flood. He and his wife and his sons and their wives with them were all the various kinds of animals, those approved for eating and for sacrifice, and those that were not, along with the birds and the small animals that scurry along the ground. They entered the boat in pairs, male and female, just as God commanded Noah. After 7 days, the waters of the flood came and covered the earth. When Noah was 600 years old, on the 17th day of the 2nd month, all the underground waters erupted from the earth, and the rain fell in mighty torrents from the sky. The rain continued to fall for 40 days and 40 nights. That very day Noah had gone into the boat with his wife and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives. With him in the boat were pairs of every kind of animal, domestic and wild, large and small, along with birds of every kind. 2 by 2 they came into the boat, representing every living thing that breathes. A male and female of each kind entered, just as God had commanded Noah. Then the Lord closed the door behind them. For 40 days the flood waters grew deeper, covering the ground and lifting the boat high above the earth. As the waters rose higher and higher above the ground, the boat floated safely on the surface. Finally, the water covered even the highest mountains on the earth, rising more than 22 feet above the highest peaks. All the living things on the earth died: birds, domestic animals, wild animals, small animals that scurry along the ground, and all the people. Everything that breathed and lived on dry land died. God wiped out every living thing on the earth: people, livestock, small animals that scurry along the ground, and the birds of the sky. All were destroyed. The only people who survived were Noah and those with him in the boat, and the floodwaters covered the earth for 150 days. The flood recedes. Genesis 8, 1 through 22. But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and livestock with him in the boat. He sent a wind to blow across the earth, and the floodwaters began to recede. The underground waters stopped flowing, and the torrential rains from the sky were stopped. So the floodwaters gradually receded from the earth. After 150 days, exactly 5 months from the time the flood began, the boat came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. 2.5 months later, as the water continued to go down, other mountain peaks became visible. After 40 days, Noah opened the window he had made in the boat and released a raven. The bird flew back and forth until the floodwaters on the earth had dried up. He also released a dove to see if the water had receded and it could find dry ground. But the dove could find no place to land because the water still covered the ground. So it returned to the boat, and Noah held out his hand and drew the dove back inside. After waiting another 7 days, Noah released the dove again. This time, the dove returned to him in the evening with fresh olive leaf in its beak. Then Noah knew that the floodwaters were almost gone. He waited another 7 days and then released the dove again. This time, it did not come back. Noah was 601 years old. On the first day of the new year, 10.5 months after the flood began, the floodwaters had almost dried up from the earth. Noah lifted back the covering of the boat and saw that the surface of the ground was drying. 2 more months went by, and at last the earth was dry. Then God said to Noah, "Leave the boat, all of you. You and your wife and your sons and their wives. Release all the animals, the birds, the livestock, the small animals that scurry along the ground, so they can be fruitful and multiply throughout the earth." So Noah, his wife, and his sons and their wives left the boat, and all of the large and small animals and birds came out of the boat, pair by pair. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and there he sacrificed as a burnt offering the animals and the birds that had been approved for that purpose. And the Lord was pleased with the aroma of the sacrifice and said to himself, "I will never again curse the ground because of the human race. Even though everything they think or imagine is bent towards evil from childhood, I will never again destroy all living things. As long as the earth remains, there will be planting and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night." God's covenant with Noah, Genesis 9, 1-17. Then God blessed Noah and his sons and told them, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth, all the animals of the earth, all the birds of the sky, all the small animals that scurry along the ground, and all the fish in the sea will look on you for food, just as I have given you grain and vegetables. But you must never eat any meat that still has lifeblood in it. And I will require the blood of anyone who takes another person's life. If a wild animal kills a person, it must die, and anyone who murders a fellow human must die. If anyone takes a human life, that person's life will also be taken by human hands. For God made human beings in his own image. Now be fruitful and multiply and repopulate the earth." Then God said to Noah and his sons, "I hereby confirm my covenant with you and your descendants, and with all the animals that were on the boat, with you, the birds, the livestock, and all the wild animals, every living creature on the earth. Yes, I am confirming my covenant with you. Never again will floodwaters kill all the living creatures. Never again will a flood destroy the earth." Then God said, "I am giving you a sign of my covenant with you and with all the living creatures for all generations to come. I have placed my rainbow in the clouds. It is the sign of my covenant with you and with all the earth." It's right there. It's the symbol of God. It's the symbol of the Lord and nothing else. Never again will the floodwaters destroy all life. When I see a rainbow in the clouds, I will remember the eternal covenant between God and every living creature on earth. Then God said to Noah, "Yes, this rainbow is a sign of the covenant I am confirming with all the creatures on the earth." Noah's sons, Genesis 9, 18-10:1. The sons of Noah who came out of the boat with their father were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham is the father of Canaan. From these 3 sons of Noah came all the people who now populate the earth. After the flood, Noah began to cultivate the ground, and he planted a vineyard. One day he drank some wine he had made, and he became drunk and lay naked inside his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw that his father was naked, and went outside and told his brothers. Then Shem and Japheth took a robe and held it over their shoulders and backed into the tent to cover their father. As they did this, they looked the other way, so they would not see him naked. When Noah woke up from his stupor, he learned what Ham, his youngest son, had done. Then he cursed Canaan, the son of Ham. "May Canaan be cursed. May he be the lowest of servants to his relatives." Then Noah said, "May the Lord, the God of Shem, be blessed, and may Canaan be his servant. And may God expand the territory of Japheth. May Japheth share the prosperity of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant. Noah lived another 350 years after the great flood. He lived 950 years, and then he died. This is the account of the families of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and the three sons of Noah. Many children were born to them after the great flood. Descendants of Japheth, Genesis 10, 2 through 5. The descendants of Japheth were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tyrus. The descendants of Gomer were Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. The descendants of Javan were Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Rodanim. Their descendants became the seafaring peoples that spread out to various lands, and identified by its own language, clan, and national identity. 1 Chronicles 1, 5 through 7. The descendants of Japheth were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tyrus. The descendants of Gomer were Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. The descendants of Javan were Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Rodanim. The descendants of Ham, Genesis 10, 6 through 10. The descendants of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. The descendants of Cush were Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Ramah, and Sabteca. The descendants of Ramah were Sheba and Dedan. Cush was also the ancestor of Nimrod, who was the first heroic warrior on earth. Since he was the greatest hunter in the world, his name became proverbial. People would say, "This man is like Nimrod, the greatest hunter in the world." He built a kingdom in the land of Babylonia, with the cities of Babylon, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh. From there he expanded his territory to Assyria, building the cities of Nineveh, Rehoboth, Calah, and Resen, the great city located between Nineveh and Calah. Mizraim was the ancestor of the Ludites, Anamites, Lehabites, Naphtuhites, Pathrusites, Chalcihites, and the Caphtorites, from whom the Philistines came. Canaan's oldest son was Sidon, the ancestor of the Sidonians. Canaan was the ancestor of the Hittites, Jebusites, Amorites, Girgashites, Hivites, Arkites, Sinites, Arvadites, Zemarites, and Hamathatites. The Canaanite clans eventually spread out, and the territory of Canaan extended from Sidon in the north to Gerar and Gaza in the south, and east as far as Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboam near Lasha. These were the descendants of Ham, identified by clan, language, territory, and national identity. The descendants of 1 Chronicles 1, 8 through 16. The descendants of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, Put, Canaan. The descendants of Cush were Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Ramah, and Sabteca. The descendants of Ramah were Sheba and Dedan. Cush was also the ancestor of Nimrod, who was the first heroic warrior on earth. Mizraim was the ancestor of the Ludites, Anamites, Lehabites, Naphtuhites, Pathrusites, Chalcihites, and the Caphtorites, from whom the Philistines came. Canaan's oldest son was Sidon, the ancestor of the Sidonians. Canaan was also the ancestor of the Hittites, Jebusites, Amorites, Girgashites, Hivites, Arkites, Sinites, Arvadites, Zemarites, and Hamathites. And I nailed that. Descendants of Shem, Genesis 10, 21 through 30. Sons were also born to Shem, the older brother of Japheth. Shem was the ancestor of all the descendants of Eber. The descendants of Shem were Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. The descendants of Aram were Uz, Hul, Gether, and Mash. Arphaxad was the father of Shelah, and Shelah was the father of Eber. Eber had two sons. The first was named Peleg, which means division, for during his lifetime the people of the world were divided into different language groups. His brother's name was Joktan. Joktan was the ancestor of Almadad, Sheleph, Hazarmaveth, Jira, Hadoram, Uzal, and Dikla, Obal, Abimael, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. All were the descendants of Joktan. The territory they occupied extended from Mesha all the way to Sephir in the eastern mountains. 1 Chronicles 1, 17 through 23. The descendants of Shem were Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. The descendants of Aram were Uz, Hul, Gether, and Mash. Arphaxad was the father of Shelah, and Shelah was the father of Eber. Eber had 2 sons. The first was named Peleg, which means division, for during his lifetime the people of the world were divided into different language groups. His brother's name was Joktan. Joktan was the ancestor of Almadad, Shalaph, Hazarmaveth, Jira, Hadaram, Uzal, Dikla, Obal, Abmael, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. These were all the descendants of Joktan. Genesis 10:31 through 32. These were the descendants of Shem, identified by clan, language, territory, and national identity. These are the clans that descended from Noah's son, arranged by nation according to their line of descent. All the nations of the earth descended from these clans after the great flood. Okay, so if you're new to Joyful Devotions, if this is new to you and you didn't follow along last year, this Bible is a chronological Bible. So if you find me repeating things, it's because I am. Throughout the way up through, I want to say, the end of Exodus, Leviticus, maybe, at least Exodus. We read, so in this example, Descendants of Shem, we read Genesis 10:21 through 30, which talked about the descendants of Shem, but then we repeated that same information in 1 Chronicles 1:17 through 23. So instead of reading it and then reading it again later in Chronicles, we read it all right now in the order that it happened. So I do repeat myself at times, not just with the Bible reading, but with other things because I don't have a very good memory, right? All right, so let's do Trim Healthy Devotions next. That was a long reading today. All right, so let's do this. This is Trim Healthy Mama 100 Days of Inspiration. We're on day 3. Okay. I take a little sip of my coffee before it gets cold. I have a trimmy going this morning. All right. The price of greatness. When a new baby is born and we take this precious life into our arms, we are not only overcome with awe and delight, but also with the enormity of the task that lies ahead. We are responsible to keep this little life alive. We have to nurse, nourish, love, protect, and train our children until they one day leave our home. Even then, we never stop praying for them. Even then, their trials and challenges are still our concerns. I remember more than 16 years ago when Serene's oldest son, Arden, was born. A few days after his birth, he came down with the respiratory syncytial virus, RSV. Syncytial? I never knew what that stood for. And we had to rush him to the hospital. As baby Arden was turning blue, Sam, the new father, frantically asked, "How do we keep him alive?" However, it is not only caring for a new life. Mothers bear the weight of managing a home and family. It's not like other careers where you clock in and out at a certain time. We feel this weight upon us continually. Sir Winston Churchill once said, "The price of greatness is responsibility." Yes, you have a great responsibility upon you, mother, because your career is great, not because it is insignificant. Don't try to minimize the greatness of your career and relegate it to the sidelines. Embrace it fully. Embrace the responsibility. It is the price of greatness. That's from Nancy. Next one is inspired by true beauty. Proverbs 17:22 says, "A merry heart doeth good, like a medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones." Recently, we had to spend several hours at an airport in one of the biggest cities in the U.S. People watching passes the time, but we couldn't help noticing 2 extremes. Some women were so polished and perfect in their appearance, it was apparent their physical image was of utmost importance. Hey, we're not judging the effort to look nice. We should all put our best face forward. But many women walking past our spectator seats seemed heavily burdened with the impossible level of refinement. Shoes, purse, nails, jewelry, hair, and face all buffed, polished, and shined to stunning perfection. Many wore tight smile or remained expressionless. On the other extreme, some appear to have given up on their appearance, dragged down by life and health issues. Frowns and despondency carved deeply into their faces. Sloppy t-shirts, baggy sweats, and an "I'm too far gone to change" written clearly on their countenance. And then a radiant elderly woman walked past. There were wrinkles on her face, but they comfortably housed the smile she beamed at Serene's baby. She couldn't help stopping to squeeze the chubby baby's thigh. Purse and shoes did not perfectly match, but this was true beauty, an essence of youth even in her mature years. We are in our late 30s and mid 40s. It's easy to fall into the false mindset, especially when you are in the public eye, that you have to look young, perfect, polished. This is a lie. God has given us seasons of life, and all his seasons are precious and planned. We are both determined to smile more and concern ourselves less with perfection and youth. Serene and Pearl. Okay, and the last one is throw an endurance party. We might be struggling physically, others are struggling financially, some are struggling emotionally or spiritually. If we feel like we're struggling alone in the ways of food, it doesn't mean we're the only ones suffering this world. Everyone struggles, and if it wasn't yesterday, it's today. If it's not today, then it's tomorrow. It's all part of our growing time here on earth. Romans 5:3-5 says, "Not only so, but we glory in tribulation also, knowing that tribulation worketh patience, and patience experience, and experience hope, and hope maketh not ashamed, because the love of God is shed abroad in our hearts by the Holy Ghost which is given unto us." Instead of throwing ourselves pity parties, let's throw ourselves endurance parties. Meadow. She's wise for, how old was she when she wrote that? 19. That's a pretty wise thing for a 19-year-old to say, because I think people that age usually feel that way. She was trained up well. Okay, guys, thank you for joining me this morning. That was a longer devotion. I know some of the ones in the beginning of the Bible are long. So thank you for joining me this morning. I'm looking forward to bedtime. I'm just kidding. A second cup of coffee, apparently. My goal this year is to try to get up a little earlier and be consistent with my wake up time. I told Bonnie my goal this morning was 4 a.m. I got up at 5:20. I almost made it, but not really. Tomorrow's a new day. I went to bed too late. Tomorrow will be 4 a.m. that I will shoot for to get up. But I'm going to try to do consistently treadmill devotions every morning at 6:30-ish. It's my goal to be right around 6:30. So thank you for joining me this morning. I will be live for breakfast in just a few minutes. I have a very complicated breakfast plan this morning. A very simple breakfast, a grab and go, easy peasy breakfast. So I will be live in just a few minutes for that. I got to turn on some lights in this house and wake up a little, and I will see you for breakfast. If not, maybe I'll see you back tomorrow for more joyful daily devotions. Love you guys. Have a great day.